All right.
We still, I think at this point, don't know exactly what to make of Sean Clifford's performance versus Wisconsin on the whole. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr, in the BWI Daily Edition. That's what we're going to talk about today. Sean Clifford, was he good? Was he bad versus Wisconsin, with two halves that were very different? Now, I've given some analysis throughout the week here on the BWI Daily Edition, but we're going to really get in deep after some of the comments James Franklin made yesterday during his press conference with the media, because he talked for a couple of answers for an extended period of time of something interesting that I thought of: what makes a good quarterback, and how does Sean Clifford look or resemble those things. So I brought in an expert on Sean Clifford and on James Franklin. That would be Nate Bauer, senior editor here at Blue White Illustrated. Nate, how you doing?
I'm great. Let's drop the expert thing. Let's not get carried away here.
Well, you are our resident expert on both of those men from a narrative standpoint, and I will defer to you when we talk about these things as the expert on those guys, or at least that's how we're going to build it up so that people want to watch.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to be, humble here, but if you say so. All
right. Perfect. So James Franklin had some comments yesterday during his press conference about again, something that I thought was super interesting with how do you play the quarterback position the right way, and how, as a senior, now with the situation he's in, how Sean Clifford can take advantage of some things in his life that maybe he wouldn't have before. What were your major takeaways from that conversation with James?
Yeah, I mean, it's not this isn't revelatory in any way or necessarily, but experience matters.
Yeah.
That's the gist, is experience matters, and the more of it that you have and the more that you do with it, right? I mean, there is a scenario where having experience is not to your benefit because you don't learn from it and you don't grow from it. You just keep doing the same things. You're steadfast in your resolve, and you're unwilling to take a different approach. But for many people, and specifically what he's saying about Sean Clifford, is the experiences that he has had. And that's from a broad perspective, but also in the narrow view. The actual X's and O's, those experiences all create a data set from which he's able to work as a quarterback. And when you have that background, like, we're talking technology here, you and I occasionally.
Yeah.
Your browser cache, I
think.
Right?
Yeah. Cache, I think.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The point is that the web page loads more quickly.
Yep.
When you've been there before, right? And when you have all of those saved images and so on and so forth. When that exists, it makes the response time that much quicker. And Sean Clifford has that now. He has that ability. He has those experience. He's seen every defense that he's going to see. He knows what's coming. And as you pointed out to me, that's a major part of the battle for playing the quarterback position, specifically at this level.
Yeah, and this is what James Franklin had to say yesterday during his press conference about knowing what the defense is going to do because of your film study.
What it's about, it's not just knowing the plays and knowing the defense. It's what are your answers? And if they bring this pressure, what's the adjustment to the protection, or where are my relief throws or hots, or so on and so forth. And I think that's where it really becomes powerful, as a quarterback, is when you feel like the defense can't be right because you have the answers. Here's my man beater, here's my zone beater, here's my, my pressure answer, whether it's adjusting a protection or a hot throw or, whatever it may be, or checking the play. And that's where I think you got a chance to be really good on offense, is when the offensive players, specifically the quarterback, feel like you really can't be right on defense because, we hold the chalk last on offense, and you have the opportunity to make the adjustments. And that's about anticipation, right? Anticipation, everybody talks about the quarterback position is because pre-snap, based on your film study and your experience, you got a pretty good understanding of what's coming. 70% of the time you should know what's going to happen before the ball snapped, and now 70 to 80%, and now you're just confirming it at the snap.
So that's the part that I think is really interesting about Sean Clifford is that we've talked about this before. He's always been a smart quarterback. He's always been a guy that, from the X's and O's perspective, he's been able to know a lot of stuff, but it's the translation to the field that I think has been a bit of a difficult process for him. Now that he's a senior, and as James Franklin mentioned there, his course load is lighter, he can focus more on film study, and he can really get down into it. I do think we saw a step forward in that when it came to his ability to make the right decisions and look comfortable in the mental process. Maybe his footwork, and everyone who is following along with the stuff we do here, maybe the footwork isn't great. Maybe some of the fundamentals aren't great. From the mental processing standpoint, though, I do think we saw a step forward. Is that, you said this earlier, that's not something that every quarterback can do. Some of them still don't learn. What is it about Sean that you think has allowed him to do that?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the bad experiences, right?
Yeah.
I mean, last year is just it's such a key element, and not just last year. Certainly, the end of his 2019 season have shaped his outlook and have shaped how he wants to approach this. The area that I think is so different for him this season, and again, we're working with a very limited data set, right? We've got
Yeah.
one half and then a second half. But what is striking to me is Sean Clifford in the past has allowed negative things to snowball.
Yeah.
He has and yeah, it's kind of a 2-year storyline of being jittery and jumpy and overexcited at the start of games. However, he, for as uncomfortable as he looked at times in the first half against Wisconsin, it never seemed as though he was trying to force the issue.
Yes. Yep. Which is
And
something
to
we've talked about a
me,
lot.
yeah, and so like, that can happen, right? You're playing blackjack and you catch a string of cold cards, and all of a sudden you're making bets that you wouldn't make because you want to get hot, right? And in that circumstance on Saturday, where it's 0-0, the fact that the defense was able to do what it did in keeping Wisconsin off of the scoreboard, I think. Now, look, I'm gonna have this secondary conversation about how Sean Clifford has grown and how the offense took this very mature approach, but they were aided magnificently
Yeah.
and very significantly by the fact that that score was 0-0.
Yep.
Because if that score was 17-0 or 21-0,
It could have
I
easily
don't
been any of those too.
I don't know that any of those guys could honestly say that they would have responded the way that they did
Yeah.
by keeping their cool, by keeping their patience, right? And guess what? That's going to happen this season. Like, there will be times where they dig themselves a hole in the first half, and you've got to be able to withstand that and weather that and get through it. And they did on Saturday,
Yeah.
but it's going to be a to be determined kind of thing.
So this is another interesting thing that James Franklin talked about yesterday when he mentioned you want to get to a point where if you're the quarterback, you feel like the defense can't be right because you have all the answers. You know what they're going to do. And you, as Franklin said, you have the chalk last. So you get to make the last decision. You get to see what they're doing pre-snap, and then you get to make the checks at the line of scrimmage. I thought I saw more of Sean Clifford taking command of the offense and not just looking to the sideline. Like actually making adjustments and decisions at the sideline. If that's the case, and if Sean Clifford is that quarterback, even from a fundamental standpoint, if he doesn't get better technically, how much does that raise the ceiling for Penn State as a football team?
I'm always torn on this because I think that there's one of the things that I hear, right? Some of the feedback that I get is that Sean Clifford isn't good enough to win a national championship. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And that's the ceiling that we're constantly talking about
Right.
with Penn State football. That's a ridiculously high ceiling. there are I mean, realistically, there are 3 or 4 programs that are capable of winning a national championship any given year.
Right.
And 2 of them are the same every year. One of them is the same most years,
Yep.
right? And then there's like a rotating cast of 3 or 4 other schools that might get into that 4th spot, right? So, so the fact that we're talking about it or Sean Clifford in that context says that Penn State as a program is ready to reach that height otherwise. And I don't know that that's fair to Sean Clifford.
Is that fair to the program? So
I don't think it's fair to the program.
are they ready for that?
But I think that's the fundamental flaw with that conversation is when we talk about Sean Clifford as being the inhibitor of a national championship for Penn State, I think that wildly overestimates how prepared the rest of the right. And so it's not Sean Clifford. Can Sean Clifford win a Big Ten championship? Yeah, I think he can. I think Sean Clifford is good enough to win a Big Ten championship. I think that Penn State is good enough to win a Big Ten championship. I think that there is one other team in the conference that is probably better than them.
Yeah.
Right? But is it possible for them to win a game like that this season? Absolutely. I don't think there's any problem with that. But how good can Sean Clifford be? How good can Penn State be if Sean Clifford reaches his height? Pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that. It's just a matter of, hey, he's not the only piece of this puzzle that Penn State needs to solve before it can have that level of success.
So I usually get the wet blanket moniker because, I'm pointing out all of the realities instead of all the possibilities. I'm glad somebody else is doing that with me. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for joining me over on the realistic side of, there's only a couple of teams every year that can win a national championship, and is it just the quarterback or is it the whole team? So let me ask you this, though, because your logical train there makes a lot of sense of can they win the Big Ten, stepping stone 1? Yes, but what that means is fill in the blank of what it means. That puts you in the college football playoff discussion right off the bat. So
totally.
That's where we're talking about, right? Like I guess if you have a quarterback that can confidently execute the offense and the offense is talented enough to beat anyone in your own conference, and your own conference has Ohio State. I guess this is where everyone wants to get to the end. They want to get to the answer before we get through. They want to see the puzzle before you put all the pieces together. Right. So I'm having a hard time with, I guess, a question here, but it just becomes that tangent that you go down of, so where are we going with this? Because Penn State fans for a long time have wanted to beat Ohio State. And I know that we're talking about Ball State this week. I put in the graphic over in the corner, the Ball State Cardinal. But, when we have this conversation about Sean Clifford, it always leads back to that conclusion. So I guess, are you saying that this team temper your expectations as what they're going to do, or temper your expectations because the lofty expectations are unreasonable and unhelpful?
No, I mean, I just think that he is a top. Again, PFF ranked him at what, 85th?
Were they that kind? They were not kind. Yeah, I think he was less than that.
He was terrible last year.
Yeah.
Granted, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think that Sean Clifford this season has the potential to be one of the best 20 quarterbacks in Division I football, in the FBS, right? Can he lead a top 25 team? Absolutely. Are there enough elements outside of him that on the whole, they can be good enough to reach those lofty aspirations? Yes, to reach them. However, he's not a guy who you're going to look at alone Like that was
Yeah.
the whole conversation last year is he cannot overcome all of the other deficiencies. He's not he isn't that type of talent. However, when the other pieces are in place and instead of deficiencies, they are all good to great, he's capable.
Yeah.
He's capable
Yes.
of not driving the train off the tracks. But that's a huge deal. That is a huge deal to have a conductor who can do that, who can keep it on schedule, and obviously, I mean, I hate the analogy, but like reach the destination. It's just a matter of being reasonable about how he's going to do that. And
Yeah.
I thought that Saturday was, in so many ways, the perfect exemplification of that. He can't, he, Sean Clifford is not going to bail you out of not having any answers on the offensive line or in pass protection for what Wisconsin's doing defensively. He can't do that by himself. He
Yeah.
doesn't.
He's
That's
not
not
Patrick.
in
He's
his
not
will.
Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be the guy that scrambles, finds the guy downfield, and throws the dart. He's
Nope.
not going to be that guy. To your point,
Correct.
I want to point out a couple of the other factors in this game. Now, you mentioned PFF. First off, 3 big-time throws in that game as charted by PFF. No turnover-worthy plays. So as of right now, where that grade stands, that is a dramatic change from what we saw last year, where he's hovering.
I think that's generous too, because he did have one turnover-worthy play in the first half. He threw one into triple coverage that
I
was
agree.
to Jahan Dotson. Anyway,
Yeah, I
sorry.
I agree with that. No, I there was a couple of plays that were inaccurate, and like his grade reflects that. If you want to check out pff.com to see his grade in Premium Stats 2.0, the part that I think is interesting, and the part that I've been railing on for probably 2 months now, when we've talked about Sean Clifford, is the environment, and this is what you're saying, the environment in which he's given an opportunity to make plays. I talked about this of the quality of his deep attempts. First off, 24% of his throws were down the field 20-plus yards against Wisconsin. Once they decided to go there, they threatened the defense deep, and it opened things up. Now, he was not where he needed to be when it comes to his ability to hit those targets. I've covered that this week. But he hit 3 of 8 attempts, and he was able to generate enough offense in those situations to win the football game. That's what we're talking about. And by the way, Mike Yurcich, they weren't all go balls on the outside. It wasn't these awful tight window throws down the field. 5 of his attempts were in the middle of the field. If you can somehow get the safety split and get to the middle of the field, Sean Clifford can do that. We've seen that time and time again. So the environment in which he's playing is better than it was last year. And this is a better quarterback because of that. Now, when it comes to Mike Yurcich, another thing James Franklin said that I really wanted to touch on today that I think is a really important part of the conversation with Sean Clifford is his ability to get through his progressions and make the right decision with his legs. And James had this to say about his ability to do that.
I think the biggest thing, and Mike's done a good job of this, is, make sure that you're going through your progressions, and not, going progression 1, progression 2 run. Make sure you're going progression 1, progression 2, progression 3, step up in the pocket, climb in the pocket and hit a check down, or keep your momentum going and stay on the move and go get us some positive yardage.
So to me, Nate, when you're talking about going through his progressions, that's something that Sean Clifford did not do until we saw him do it against Wisconsin. Like that's a huge thing, right? That's got to be, when we talk about this narrative, that's got to be a huge thing.
Yeah, no, and it was one of the primary critiques of him last year was that when it wasn't there on the first option, he took off. I mean, he had double-digit carries in the first, I don't know, 3-4 weeks of the season before things final, right? And so like James Franklin was talking yesterday about his having to make those choices between the run and the pass and how that's kind of a delicate balance. But if you can run the ball out of an escape of a sack, right? You're nearly brought down, but you escape the pocket and you're able to keep your eyes upfield. You see that you have some running room. You're not going to take that shot down the field. You can pick up 10, 15 yards.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it. But then the other element is, okay, get through your progressions.
Yeah.
Get through the first, second, third read, the checkdowns. And if none of those are there, if none of those are, if you're proactive in that approach and none of those are there, and then you take off, all right, you've done yourself a service. You've done as much as you can do and are going to do, unless obviously throwing the ball away becomes the better option as well.
Yeah.
So no, I mean it's this is what Mike Yurcich is here for.
Yes.
These are the elements that Sean Clifford at times has not had in his repertoire, or decision-making repertoire, that have come up short in the past, that obviously they're hoping to rectify this season. And so far, despite the frustration that I think a lot of fans felt about that first half at Wisconsin, he did not get them into trouble. And
Yeah.
that's a huge element to them being able to have the type of success that they want this season.
Especially with when you consider the performance the defense had. Now, a lot of that we've talked about, the number of plays they were on the field, but the number of negative plays they created for the Wisconsin offense, to me, that's the percentage I'm looking at of those plays, because Wisconsin is going to run the football. They're going to run the football, and you're going to give up some yards because that's how their offense is designed. If you're going up against a spread offense, you're going to give up some yards underneath. Do you make the tackle, and do you limit the damage? That's what you're supposed to do as a defense. They did that, and they have a defense that it seems at this point is capable of keeping them in any game, so then it becomes about the scheme and what you can do on offense to make the opposing defense pay for having it be a tight game. But Mike Yurcich, and this is where I want to emphasize this again, checkdowns are sexy. For Sean Clifford, a guy in 2019 that I saw him chuck the ball to KJ Hamler a ton of times deep. And then in 2020, a guy that wanted to do it all. He wanted to be able to, on every play, make the right decision and make the defense pay for it by throwing into tight windows, finding the guy that's open, all those things. Noah Cain's a really talented player. And if you get him the ball in the flat, now, sometimes the defense is going to make a tackle, but I think Noah Cain has shown he's going to make that guy miss. And if you're Sean Clifford, he's better at running the football than you are. Get your playmakers the football and make the right decisions. And Sean Clifford, once again, I'm going to say this, despite, I try not to go against the logic too much, right, or the data too much, but despite the fact that his PFF grade wasn't great, some of his completion percentage metrics weren't great. Some of his deep metrics were not great. He made the right decisions. He, time and time again, for the most part, made mature decisions with the football, checked the ball down, got it to his playmakers, and you're going to live with the inaccuracies. That part you're going to live with. But as far as his ability to operate the offense, I'm sold. At this point, Nate, I'm sold of his ability to do that week one out of the box against that defense. I was not expecting that performance, and I think you're right. They can beat any team in the Big Ten, and when we're talking about Ball State this week, they should be able to do whatever they want against that team, and I know that's a good team. I know they have 16 returning veterans, super seniors. They should be able to beat that team. It shouldn't be a question.
Yeah, they should, but I'm still not expecting a totally smooth operation. It's just too early. Like they're going to have that progression that happens when Sean Clifford said it. He said, learn from the first half, build on the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the first half was they did something wrong. They didn't execute the way that they wanted to. The second half was the beginning stages of what they envisioned the offense being capable of doing. And so if they can do that, and now again, like Ball State's defense is not going to present the challenges that Wisconsin's did. So you've already passed the first test, and the first test is one of the harder tests that you're going to take this season. So now there's a little bit of breathing room and ability to get in those reps and I don't want to talk as though a win against Ball State is a given. I don't think at this level that's what happens. Mm-hmm. It's not. However, for Penn State, your expectation should be that with the right execution, with the right game plan, you're going to put yourself in a position where the stress and the pressure and the demand is less naturally. You're at home.
Yeah.
It's not as tough as an opponent as Wisconsin. Penn State should be able to have some success offensively, and again, just continue that building process as they move into what inevitably is going to be a progressively more difficult schedule as they go along.
Penn State reached 11th in the AP poll yesterday when it came out in the afternoon. Fair? Not, overranked, underranked? What's your thought about that? And I know that the polls are one thing or another, but just as a barometer for where they stand in the season, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't know what other choice was out there. I mean, to me, it feels very much like Wisconsin is as much of an unknown to me as Penn State is. I don't. Graham Mertz didn't,
He wasn't good. He was really bad.
Yeah, there were no flowers and rainbows, and so if that's the guy, then is Wisconsin really 12? If that's
right.
So like so I'm just a little bit wishy-washy on that. But even Ohio State, I think has some questions to answer. The Big Ten in general, I'm just, Iowa looks like a world beater now. Like, is that so? It just takes a few weeks, I think, for the rankings and those kind of ratings to sort themselves out. And for now, 11's fine. But I think that Penn State certainly would acknowledge that it has a lot more to prove and to demonstrate that it's really the 11th best team in the country, or in its aspirations, better than that.
This is the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr, senior editor of Blue White Illustrated, Nate Bauer, with us as well. Tomorrow on the Daily Edition, Robbie General he's a Ball State beat writer. He's going to come on the show and give us the information that we all need, which is what to expect from Ball State. We know they're a veteran team. We all know they won the MAC championship, but what are they? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses of the team? What to expect? Your initial thoughts, though, what's your early look at Ball State as far as what you've seen of them, if you've seen anything?
I have not seen anything. Certainly, I know that, the expectations in the MAC are fairly lofty for them. I tend to like the analytics and the data points and those types of things. And so when ESPN's FPI gives Penn State a 92% chance of winning this game before the season, that suggests to me that the storyline of, one of the questions in Franklin's press conference yesterday was trap game.
Yeah.
And so that was sure, maybe, but not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
This is a game that Penn State should win, and should do so in a lot of ways the same way that I felt about Penn State winning at Wisconsin. Penn State has better players.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, Penn State, on the whole, the players are just better, and the best players are better than their best players. So if that's the case, they should win.
Yeah. I mean that's a fair way of looking at it. That is as base as you can get. That is as focused on the individual problems as you can get. Of like, these guys are better than these guys. That's a good place to start for Penn State football. I brought you on here to talk about Sean Clifford today, and to really get into all the things James Franklin talked about when it came to footwork and decision making and all that stuff. I love that stuff. What are you thinking about this week? So what's in Nate Bauer's brain about Penn State football heading into the second half of the week against Ball State?
Just kind of the way that I was touching on earlier about using it as a stepping stone. I think that that's important. I think that the defense not being on the field for 96 plays is important. I think establishing some rhythm, getting in those reps is just very important. It would do Penn State wonders to get Taquan Roberson into the game.
Yeah.
to get some of those backup running backs into the game. Like all of those building block elements that you expect to have in your opener, Penn State did not have the opportunity to have those
Yeah.
this year. And so, right, like a few years ago, Idaho was what, 70-7 or whatever. I'm not suggesting that, but Penn State should have an opportunity to give itself some breathing room to advance, its progress on installing and establishing this offense for what it wants to become. And so that's what I'm going to be seeing
Yeah.
is our the first half thing. I think is a big deal.
Yeah.
You don't want to start to get into a habit, and obviously it's one game, so to call it a habit already is not fair or accurate.
Yeah.
But
It has
you
been a
don't want
hallmark before. So that I think a lot of
correct,
people are a little leery about that.
correct is you just want to hey, maybe 21 points in the first half,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
get into the end zone a couple of times and see where it takes you.
So that's one thing that I've been thinking about is the offensive efficiency, because we saw the big plays are there, and that with Jahan Dotson, he's coming for blood this year. Like, he is not messing around. He's going to be a big time factor in any postseason award, and this team going places as a team. He's going to be a big part of that. To me, it's the offensive efficiency, and James talked about post game. You can check out his post game comments if you haven't yet on our YouTube channel. Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, talked about the idea that Wisconsin was coming downhill with their linebackers and making it so they couldn't run the ball. What they were trying to do with the offensive line and their blocking scheme, Wisconsin was prepared for it and was deciding to take that away. And they could with their skill. How do you stay efficient when someone's determined to take a part of the game away from you? Because we've seen this before, right? We've seen this story before of a team has decided to take Saquon Barkley out of the game. Or they say, okay, we dare you, first-year starting quarterback, to throw the ball. How do you stay efficient when someone is determined to take away something that keeps you off schedule? To me, that's a really interesting thing about seeing that in Ball State. If Ball State is committed to stopping X, and you found a solution outside of that. And I do think that ties us all back into the conversation about Sean Clifford, and the defense can't be right if your quarterback knows what he's doing. So that'll be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, and look, like there's going to be and there should be some 2016-17 parallels here.
Yeah.
Trace McSorley, right? Like, just what Penn State's strength should be on paper. And so, especially after last season, defenses are going to take the approach that Wisconsin did, which is, hey, the best chance defensively to create havoc, create turnovers, and keep Penn State off the scoreboard is to make Sean Clifford frustrated. And until he proves, and he did it on Saturday, but I can't imagine that his second half performance alone is enough to dissuade Ball State from taking the same approach. And many other teams, I think Auburn's going to take the same approach. That is what these opponents are going to do until Penn State, and specifically Sean Clifford, back them off of it. That's all it is okay, you're going to have a strategy to beat that. And when you take that and take it repeatedly, at some point that opponent will back off of it. Or they should, or they're just going to continue to get beat. But if Sean Clifford can, and not just Sean Clifford, but Parker Washington, Jahan Dotson, you saw, like, Jahan Dotson talked after the game. Wisconsin was giving him one-on-one coverage all day.
Yep.
That is, again, I mean, I'm repeating myself here, but that's the game, is leverage and one-on-ones, and you winning your one-on-one. Sean Clifford has to deliver the pass, which is important because that's a tough part when you're facing the type of pressure that Wisconsin was bringing. But if he can deliver the pass, and Jahan Dotson can win his one-on-one, which he's demonstrated that he can do, you're going to have success. And so that's, it's going to continue to be that for Penn State until they do it repeatedly to the point where opponents start to say, oh, well, that's not how we want to get beat. We want to get beat by Noah Cain running the ball 40 times. But that from the onset of this season, that's not how it's going to be.
We'll find out maybe just a little bit more about what Ball State wants to do on Saturday. Robbie General of the Star Press will be joining me on the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. As always, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's not just the Daily Edition. We've got every press conference from Penn State football. We've got the recruiting podcast with Greg Pickle, Dave Eckert, and Ryan Snyder. And, of course, we have the BWI Live post-game show coming up 20 minutes after every game for Penn State football. So all of that, subscribe, and you get that. And you don't have to pay to subscribe for that stuff. If you want the premium stuff, though, bwi.rivals.com/subscribe. A great time to see all of the insights and the stuff that I know Nate, he knows the answers. He's just keeping them back for the guys on the message boards. If you want all the actual insider information, bwi.rivals.com/subscribe. Nate, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it always.
We'll be back again tomorrow on the BWI Daily Edition.